Sheriff's Office. Last night around 11:15, one of the Sheriff's Office DUI units was running radar in the 9,000 block of 103rd Street. He observes a vehicle going 65 miles an hour in a 45 mile an hour zone. He works that call and attempts to do a traffic stop on that subject in that car. The subject comes up here to Monroe Smith Street, where we're actually located here off of 103rd Street. The car begins to go off on the side of the road onto the grass as he gets in behind the vehicle. A short time later, the driver of that car bails out of the car with the car moving. The car continues forward without a driver, strikes a chain link fence, and is actually able to drive over top of the chain link fence without a driver. About that same time, the officer is bailing out of his car to give chase. He hears on the radio that this is a stolen car. The subject is climbing over a separate portion of the fence as the officer is getting out and hearing all this. The officer sees him on top of the fence, gives him commands to stop. The subject does not follow the commands of the officer. The officer takes his electronic control device out, his taser, and deploys the taser at the subject. Actually strikes him while he's on the fence. That subject is able to go over top of the fence. The officer is following behind him. As the subject lands on the other side of the fence, the taser probes become detached and have no future effect on the subject as the officer attempted again to give commands which weren't followed and attempted to use the taser again. It had no effect. The subject continued through the apartment complex here, which is the Westridge Apartments at 9541 103rd Street. Behind the buildings which the subject ran through, there's a pretty large retention pond, lake sort of thing. As the subject's running on a sidewalk, he makes an immediate left and runs into the retention pond with the officer giving chase. Again, this entire time the officer is giving instructions for the subject to stop. He's not following his instructions and again goes into the pond. The subject makes it about 2/3 of the way out while attempting to get away from the officer, kind of swimming, kind of moving towards the middle. The officer sees the subject go under the water. He's not immediately clear whether the subject is going under the water to attempt to get away from him like he's done, or if he's having trouble. Another officer quickly comes up. They're making a decision for some kind of rescue if they can. They cut a volleyball net from a recreation area in the apartment complex to try to use to throw to the subject. The subject never comes up again. They're not able to throw the net to anybody because they can't see anybody in the water. Water is 52 degrees, fairly cold. Don't know what effect that may have. Short term later, the Sheriff's Office dive team was called, and several hours later, after conducting a search of the pond, they were able to find the body of a black male matching that of the subject who ran from the officer. Medical examiner's office is on the scene, is taking over the body. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office homicide cold case detectives are on scene, working the case from our side. We will make attempts to identify who that subject is and continue on with our investigation. Once we've learned that information on the subject's identity, that will be paced through the PIO to the media and work through the case. Again, trying to come up with a resolution as to what happened. I can take some questions if anybody has them.
Do you know about an age range for this person?
He looks to be in his 20s.
Where was the car stolen from?
Still working through that to figure out exactly where it came from. And that's what the homicide cold case guys will do, is make a determination as to what relationship this male may have had to this auto theft and really how that went. That's early into this.
So he just jumped out of the car and left it going?
He jumped out of the car with it moving, leaving the car on its own. The car hits the fence. I guess it hit it just right because it was able to drive over top of this chain link fence. The chain link fence kind of popped back up even after the car went over it. And at a different portion of the fence is where the subject climbed over the fence.
There have been other instances when JSO officers on their own have chosen to go into water after suspects or are off duty and do something like that. Is it expected of them to go into the water, or is it up to their own call in each case?
Well, each case is obviously different. Here's a case where a subject was combative to the point that he would not stop, resisted efforts to be taken into custody, and this is an incident where you may have had two bodies recovered from that lake, one of which may have been a police officer. You want to be able to be on firm ground when you're trying to take somebody into custody. The middle of the lake is probably not the best place to try to wrestle somebody and get them in handcuffs. Efforts were made again to formulate some kind of rescue plan, but to take them into custody and put the officer's life at risk. And again, it's just another one of the things that officers come in contact with a routine, if you will, traffic stop, which there is no such thing. It turns into something where you may be placed in a position to do something like that.
You said the taser became disabled. Was that a malfunction on the officer's part or the product? Or
No, neither of which. The taser electronic control device operates in a way that it fires two probes that are attached to a wire to the unit. If those probes become detached or the wires become broken, that taser is no longer effective, and the voltage can't pass through to the subject, and it becomes ineffective at that point in time.
Can you talk more about the efforts to stop this person before it got to this point? How many times did the officer try to use this taser, and why was it important to kind of use these methods leading up to this?
You obviously, the male that's deceased this morning was in control of this entire thing. First of all, he didn't have to drive 65 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. Second of all, he could have stopped when the officer got behind him. That's a law. People know to do that. He didn't do that. He was driving a stolen car. He could have not done that. He let the car go. He does not follow the officer's commands. The officer even deployed his taser, like I said, in an attempt to get cooperation. That's what we want, is compliance to our orders to stop, compliance to our orders to listen to what we're doing. He would be alive today had he done that.
Did the taser ever hit the suspect?
Yes, the taser did strike the subject as he was on top of the fence. As he made it over top of the fence, somewhere with the distance of the fence making it over or entangled with the fence itself, they become detached as he landed.
Okay, so it wasn't on long enough to get to disable it?
It was obviously not enough to make him stop.
Chief, was this man armed at all? Did you find any weapons or anything in the car?
Not found anything at this point in time. So we'll still look into that. If we discover something in that, we'll certainly let you know.
Did he have a connection to this apartment complex, or was he simply just trying to get away from the officer as much as possible?
Again, working to identify who he is, so to know what he may or may not have been connected to, so it's really hard to say at this time. Again, part of what we'll do is actively look into.
You didn't have to, evacuate anyone or shut anything down. Everything was as normal here.
Everything was as normal. A little bit of disruption with some of the noise that came from the dive team and their boat being in the water. Other than that,
The vehicle in question is the SUV.
any idea when the car was stolen, when the water stolen? I'll look into that. That'll be part of what we release to the PIO and have that information as to
How deep was the retention pond or the lake?
the point in time where he was recovered was between 8 and 10 feet. It's about 40 feet out where they recovered the body. And again, the water temperature is 52 degrees.
And the vehicle in question is the SUV
Yes.
inside the pump.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you so much.